This is the Seaside class. There are very faint lines on here if you have the Taken paint. If you just are doing this at home with a blank piece of paper, you can go along and draw your horizon line along here and kind of plot out where you'd like your sand down here. So we're going to start off by going along this horizon line with our water across here. I'm choosing to do a light blue like my example. You can always add a little bit more green for some turquoise, but I'm taking this hurricane from my tropical set. You can use whatever you've got in your box to make a nice ocean blue. And I'm reserving a little bit of a darker blue to do my cloud detail. So I'm coming along that horizon line, and now I'm going to just add in some horizontal lines, and I'm connecting some of them as I go and filling them in. And I'll go back and smooth these out later. But you can see that I'm just doing a horizontal motion, leaving a little bit of the white of the paper in here, and connecting some of these. And I'm like, the white caps that you might see as it hits a sandbar over here, kind of slowly going back and forth. Even if you kind of get a stripe in it, you can go back later and sort of connect some of these and turn them into light blue instead of white. Add some more paint here. I have a lot of water in with my blue so that it has a faint appearance, and I suggest that you at least put some strokes on this side down first so that not all the pigment is heavy over here and light over here. So when you first apply your brush, it's going to have the most amount of pigment in it. So see how all of this has the darker blue and that's lighter. So we'll just carry some of that pigment into here to sort of even out that look. And I'm squeezing water into my blue over here so that it's nice and light as far as the amount of minerals and pigments that are going to be pulling here. And you may want to do more white as it comes into shore and less as it goes out. I might want to do it a little more solid. Now if I run my brush across some of the areas that I left white, it'll close the gap a little bit to a light blue, and it'll still leave a little bit of the pigment deposits there. They kind of add that texture. So that's one way to go back in after it just dries a bit and add that extra detail. And then you could leave these just the white of the paper, or do like I did up here, but maybe just a little bit lighter. So there you go. Just like that. And we've got an ocean. So now I will do the sand right here. In this box, I just have this yellow. I don't really have a very good sand color. Like in the woodland set, there's a sand ridge color. So I'm going to just test this out. So some of the Caribbean islands have more of that tan color sand, so I'm okay with it. You can also just add a little silvery gray to it, but this one is a nice, very fainted look because it just barely has pigment and only has a lot of water and just a bit of pigment. So I'm going to go along here and start to define this top line. I've got my tester strip that you should have included in your tank and paint. See, that is more prominent, so I'm going to take that pigment and move it around and squeeze a little bit of water into that so that it's just a nice little faint light color like so. Now we'll move on to the clouds here, and you can do these a number of ways. So I'm going to show you how I have it in my example, and they're going to turn out differently every time, just as clouds would. So they're clouds that have a little bit of a heavy bottom to them in the sense that it might rain at some point, but we're not trying to give a whole storm look here, but just enough to give that shadow on the bottom where the accumulation of water starts to give that darker look. Now I've cleared my brush off, and now I'm going to take immediately this wet brush and start pulling that pigment off of this line. You can do them one at a time, which is probably more advisable because it really can dry pretty quickly, especially if you're painting outside. You've got a breeze, it's gonna affect your paint. So I'm kind of pulling with the end of my brush off of that line a little bit so that it doesn't look so stark, and I'll wet that up a little bit, clear my brush off. If I don't clear my brush off, I'll end up with too much pigment up here at first. I can always add more. And if you get too much, you can just use your paper towel and blot it away and start over again. If you'd like to make your clouds look a little bit heavier on this bottom area, you can add a little bit more pigment here and just balance the pigment versus water. And I'm going to move some of that up, maybe even add a little bit down under here, stretch it out. And I'm using the tip of my brush just to kind of create, the pigment is held at that tip of the brush, and kind of create some lighter and darker moments in this cloud here. Now I've left lines for you for 3 clouds plus these little ones, and you're more than welcome to add some. I did that for the sake of balance, but in the real world, clouds are where they are. However, if we're gonna frame this, we might want to make it look as visually symmetrical and or asymmetrical, but really thinking about where we'd like our clouds in our painting so that it's balanced is the key. And this one, I'll just kind of drag that out like so, and you can take your paper towel if you want to create a texture and just press that in a little bit. Now you've got some white here, kind of smooth that out. But that's just a fun way to create a cloud texture, is using your paper towel in that way. I'm going to blend those a bit. Okay. And come back and add more pigment here. And sometimes you just get it in one shot, you like it, and you don't have to go in and keep playing with it. But I'm doing that so that you can kind of see how you can adapt, you know, especially if you're not caring for where my lines are. I can cover those back up by adding a little bit more pigment into them so that you don't see them. And the day I was painting this out at the ocean, we had these 3 little puffy clouds along the horizon line that were so cute, so I added those in. And then kind of ones that were sort of not even defined at all on there, like so. If you want to add more sky instead of the white, you would just take, after that dries, a real light film of water here and just add a little bit of very watered down ocean in there. But I think that this actually gives the impression of what you would be looking at the beach, and so I like it, and we'll leave it just like so.